Hey, this is Chris with Hacking Your Leadership. On today's discussion on employee engagement, we're continuing the discussion we started last Thursday on insidious or kind of maybe not so obvious issues that would be causing a decline or a drop in employee engagement on your team. Last week, we talked about excessive red tape being an issue, and I know that's something that I've encountered in my job, both as an employee and as a leader. You know, trying to eliminate excessive red tape as a leader can be challenging too if you don't know where to start. On today's episode, I want to talk about the next item in that list, which is managers and supervisors with very poor communication skills. And this might seem like a very obvious one, like not insidious, not kind of hidden from view, and one of the first places to look. But the reason why I think this is an insidious cause of low employee engagement is because the managers who have poor communication skills, the supervisors and the individual leaders of people at the lowest level of leadership level of leading people, those people who have poor communication skills and poor leadership skills, oftentimes they don't know it if they've been in a role for longer than a few months, because at some point in time, maybe somebody tried to tell them that and they didn't listen. And now no one's talking to them anymore about it. And so they might be going through their day not thinking that their communication skills, their way of interacting with employees and talking to them and communicating with them, they may not think there's an issue there at all. And that can make that problem very difficult to solve.
Yeah, exactly. I think that it seems so obvious to talk through it, but also when people don't have great communication skills, or when people have learned to level up their communication skills to different audiences. I see that more often.
Where, interesting.
Where you talk to a leader or someone and how they show up or how they represent themselves in a conversation, or how they speak to, the strategies, the priorities, the KPIs, whatever the case is, how they show up in meetings with other leaders at their same level, like how they show up and how they communicate in those spaces is vastly different than how they show up and communicate locally or with their direct team on a day-to-day basis. And if if you're not, as a leader of leaders, observing those things, or if you're not figuring out ways to make sure that you have space for that team to communicate maybe some of those opportunities, to your point, it could be really, really bad. And it would be like outside of the local team with that leader who maybe lacks that communication skills, you might not know about it for a really, really long time. And then it's shocking. And it's like, well, what do you mean? Right. And so I think that it's one of those situations where it requires a lot of observation as a leader, and as if you lead leaders, you really have to look for and find out ways, spend time with, and really assess whether that person has quality communication skills. And then if not, you've really got to spend time kind of role modeling that for them, and or being really clear with any type of any type of coaching that you give to them, any type of recognition for the right stuff, or, accountability when it's not, correct. Like, it is critical if you want to shape communication skills that you're in a position to notice in multiple places to be able to understand how good somebody is with them actually.
Now, I just want to clarify something here. When you say they have different levels of communication, different skill sets, or it looks like they communicate differently with their own peers or senior leaders than to the people reporting to them. Are you saying that if you just look at one half of it would look fine? Like if you look at how they communicate with senior leaders or their boss or their peers, that you might think there isn't a problem, and the problem exists when it comes to just their direct reports?
Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm saying. That can definitely happen.
So then when I hear that, when you say that, to me what that says is it's less about an ability to communicate well. It's that sounds like a respect issue. That sounds like I'm viewing these people as lesser or lower, and I'm almost talking down to them. Whereas someone I view as having more respect for, or more reverence for, or a belief that they can somehow positively impact my career more. Now all of a sudden they get the good stuff, which means that the good stuff is there, right? That's there. To me, that's an even worse problem than a person who just, because if a manager or a supervisor has poor communication skills, but it's consistently poor no matter who they're talking to, that could be just a lack of knowledge, a lack of training. That could be, I've seen that too. That what you're talking about, I think, is more insidious, and that has more to do with that one might be harder to fix than a person who communicates poorly to everybody, because it implies that they just they view other people differently. And that's a kind of a change of heart that is required, not just a skill set to learn.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm not saying it's with full on intent, like that they are intentionally treating other people better than other people. But to your point, because I've seen it where people you get in a larger room or with different layers of leadership, and people are nervous. People are more sheltered. They're more protective of what they share and how they share. Like, it's just a difference of the audience that's there. So I think that it's those two things. You could have the intention of, I'm doing it on purpose, and I feel that the people that work for me, like, they work for me, and I get to do whatever I want. There's that piece of it. But then there's also the piece where it's like a lack of self-awareness or understanding, or they need to reset their lens on why communication is even more impactful with your direct reports and your team than it is to be maybe polished and presented in a place where you have a larger audience.
Right. So I want to go over something that people can do if you are trying to, if you're a leader of leaders and you're trying to kind of gauge whether or not the leaders reporting to you have good communication skills or poor communication skills, or if you're trying to level up your own communication skill set. I want to go over a couple things you can do to make those better. But first, let's get a word from one of our sponsors. All right, if you're a leader of people or a leader of leaders, and you believe that yourself or somebody reporting to you has poor communication skills, and you're trying to help them fix it or try to fix it in yourself, this really has to go back to watching a modeling of what good looks like. And sometimes that has to be kind of, foist upon you. And sometimes if you kind of have the self-awareness to think this is a problem you have to get better at, then you can seek out the solution on your own before it is sought out for you or forced upon you. And what that looks like is reaching out to a partner or a peer that you believe does this well. And you know who these people are. You know the people who seem to have just a way with words when it comes to whoever they're talking to. And you seek those people out and you ask them if you can hang out with them while they give a presentation, or hang out with them while they're talking to their team, or having an open dialogue with a group of people. The people who seem to do those things well, watch what they do and take notes. Not take notes on what they said, but take notes on things like, how often do they talk? How often do they listen? Where they fall in the room in terms of the amount of words that they said compared to everybody else, if they're a leader or if they're just a contributor in the conversation. And that might look differently. Ask those same people to be with you and watch you while you deliver something like this and give you feedback on how to do it. Some people that I know that are really good communicators, it took them a while before they could articulate why they were able to do that well. And it was being forced into situations where they were watching others and having to give feedback on what looks good and what didn't look good, that got them to actually have the kind of self-awareness to think, okay, this is why I'm good at doing this compared to why other people might not be good at doing it. So getting people involved in the process, helping you along on this journey is the only way to do this correctly. But it will work if you do it enough times with enough people.
Yeah, I think this is one of those things where over my career and growth as a person, like, I think there's certain aspects where you are a good communicator with certain people in certain spaces, and then you make some mistakes, and you show up in the wrong way. You say the wrong things. You get some type of a coaching from someone around that, and so you adjust. Or sometimes you shut down. You say, like, well, if I can't say or sound the way that I should with this audience, then I'll just be really quiet. Like, these things that happen over your life and time where you self-adjust, and it can be very difficult to learn in these spaces because you're truly exposing yourself. You're exposing how you speak, how you talk. You're opening yourself up for people's opinions, and it can be a hard place to really want to spend time. Like, I'll just kind of start with that. And I think, though, as you are a leader of people and you're building your leadership skills, what you find out is that you just get forced in some of these spaces, and then you just have to show up and do the best that you can do, and talk how you talk, and share how you share. And if it's good, then you'll get it. If it's not, then you'll also get it. So, like, at the end of the day, you're just continually shaping these spaces. But to your point, the only way to really get better here from a skill standpoint, or if you have a person on your team or leader on your team that struggles with some of these things, in my opinion, the only way to get better at that is you've got to have somebody there that is attentive to what they are sharing, how they're presenting, what they're talking about, and then is immediately giving them that coaching. I think that's critical. Like, I think that we're not going to learn on our own here. You can take you can go to classes. You can figure out ways to do better presentations and sound more professional and sound like a leader. And you can do all these things that are helpful. And I think that they can very easily help to build some of the skill. But much of how you know it's going better is from the opinions of other people. And if you have somebody that you can talk to that can help you with that with intention, I think you can move a little bit faster.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And if you look at all the data that's out there available, it says that somewhere between a fourth and a third of managers of people, leaders of people, receive actual specific training on doing these things. And so for a lot of leaders out there, especially leaders who are at the beginning of their leadership journey in their career, a lot of them are going into these things blind. And whatever you can do to help them get better at this earlier on in their career, the more it will serve them long term, and the less likely they will be to encounter career stalling or career ending issues when it comes to keeping employees engaged. And then the last thing I want to say about this, which I think is really important, is that this has to be done from a standpoint of purity when it comes to what the goal is. And so if a person who is being watched and given feedback to on their communication skills believes they're being held accountable or they're being performance managed on getting better communication skills, that will impact the potential outcome from the very beginning before it even starts, because they're going to be approaching this from a very defensive standpoint. But if you're approaching it from a standpoint of, hey, I noticed this, let me help you. I'm happy to kind of sit in and watch, and I'll give you some feedback on how you can get better. Make it sound a lot less formal and more easygoing, so that the person who you're giving feedback to, you're more likely to see them in the light that in which they really are, as opposed to something they made up on the spur of the moment because they were worried they were having feedback after the session, and they were trying to be somebody different than who they are. So the more authentic the person can be, the more accurate the feedback will be, and the more likely they are to get a kernel of knowledge or truth from you that might help them along on their journey. Thank you all for joining us on this discussion on employee engagement. We'll see you next Thursday as we continue this discussion on kind of insidious ways that employee engagement can be hurt, that you might not be the front of mind as a leader. You have a great day.